moving forward to one of my favorite people really on the planet. See, I'm buttering you up, Grump, so you won't tell bad stories about me. But I get to introduce Dave Richards, who's better known to most of us as Grom, as he said at ISSW. Really, only my mother calls me Dave, so I like that. And he's the director of the Alta Ski Area Avalanche Program. He's been doing that for 8 years. And are you really old enough to have worked at Alta for 22 years? Amazing. As part of his job experience, he's been an active backcountry rescuer, helicopter ski guide, and has helped develop a RACS program for Little Cottonwood. He's written for the Avalanche Review and other folks extensively on snow and on decision-making in avalanche terrain. And Grom tells us that his passion remains backcountry skiing without the radio pack. Yeah, I agree. Grom's going to talk to us about scoring snow pits, which he's been working on for at least a year now. So, welcome.
Who wants to hear a funny story from ISSW about Lynn? Look at that face. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. I've got 25 minutes to explain a napkin drawing that was born in the top shack of the Alta Ski Patrol. So for the patrollers in the room, that's what's about to go on. You guys know what's happening. So first and foremost, I want to thank my co-authors, Carl Birkeland, Doug Chabot, and Jim Earl, without whose help this concept would not have proven out and this paper would not have been possible. This paper was presented last week at ISSW as well, so a few of you have seen this before. Cronin, I threw in one different slide just to mix it up just for you, honey. No problem. So first, a disclaimer. Some words from one of the forefathers of avalanche forecasting, Ed LaChapelle. He said, "Logging pit details is a good educational tool and expands knowledge about a wide range of snow properties, but should not be confused with the backbone of avalanche forecasting." This is important. Or maybe we should take it from one of the Zen masters of skiing. All this wise stuff said, though, we still dig pits. Some people dig a lot of them, some people only dig a few. For many years, snow pit digging was considered to be avalanche forecasting. Now, however, with our new tests such as the ECT, we often regard pits as a nowcasting tool. Either way, no matter what you think about it, we still have to communicate our findings, and this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how do we boil down all of the chatter that comes from a snow pit and make it into something that we can actually make sense of. With that in mind, I'm going to introduce this scoring method. This is a numerical score used to simplify the communication of snow pit findings. It does not replace or eliminate the details of the pit. It merely summarizes them into a succinct message. Further, another disclaimer, this works in dry slab conditions. It doesn't work very well for wet snow, and we recognize that. So many years ago, Don Sheriff and Ian McCammon, who's also in the room here somewhere, proposed the concept of the stability wheel. And the stability wheel looked at three factors: strength, structure, and propagation. Originally, propagation was referred to as energy, but in recent years, we've learned a whole lot about the science behind propagation. And with our new tests, such as the ECT and the PST, we can now estimate propagation in a snow pit. So now it's strength, structure, and propagation. The cool thing about strength, structure, and propagation is that these three things can actually be quantified. These things have rules applied to them. For strength, we count the number of taps. For structure, we can use either the Lemons or our preferred method is the PhD for persistent weak layer, hardness change, and depth. And for propagation, we can measure propagation from none to full to end across the column. The other cool thing about strength, structure, and propagation is they're really easy to do. All you need is a shovel, a hand, a string, and the ability to count. And as a result, even I can do it. With these things being things that can be quantified, it also means that they're communicable, if only we knew the language. Norman MacLean once wrote that the art of the English language lays in thrift. and I propose that nothing is more thrifty nor more accurate than a simple number. So we propose applying a score to stability test results and snowpack layering to provide a way to quickly communicate the critical information from a snow pit. Scored on a scale of 1 to 9, the overall stability is assessed using the stability wheel of strength, structure, and propagation, can be communicated to others through a single number. The theme is the same as the Glasgow Coma Scale for the ski patrollers in the room. The higher the score is, the better life is. It's really, really straightforward. Instead of a long, drawn-out conversation, a forecaster can instead hear, I dug 3 pits on my route today. There were 4 across the board. With that simple information, scored between 1 and 9, I get a 4. I know that snow is not great out there today. I know that my stability is not high. Now, if we want, we can go into more detail in a professional setting. But for a recreational user with a 4, they may know just enough to start to get nervous, which is important. There's always value in the detail. And again, I want to reiterate that this does not replace that detail. It's merely a communication tool. As with all things in life, there's a few rules. Breaking these won't get you thrown in the clink, but they're important nonetheless. The purpose of these rules is to address the great debate between the importance of structure versus the importance of propagation. Now, I'll come clean. I'm a structure guy. But I hear the argument that without propagation, there is no avalanche. So how do we weight the individual factors of strength, or of structure rather, and propagation to bring peace to our snow pit? That's what these rules are about. We recognize the value of propagation and structure as unique but related factors. In this method, one factor has an effect on the other, and as a result, they combine to provide an estimate of the overall stability. As a further factor to give additional weight to structure and propagation, we give them a scoring range of 0 to 3 rather than the 1 to 3 available for strength. The rules are, if a persistent weak layer exists, then structure must be less than or equal to 1. If you have ECTP-V, then structure must equal 0. And if ECTP, then structure is less than or equal to 1. You guys will find if you use this, these are actually really, really, really easy to remember. So, the story of my life. I'm not good at communicating. You guys have listened to me for 4 minutes now, so you know that I'm not good at communicating. There's a couple of my coworkers in the room. They know I'm not good at communicating. Some friends in the room. They know I'm not good at communicating. You know who really knows? Is my wife. In this case, I showed her this pit. Now, she's really, really smart, and she listens to me spew about snow all day long, every day, which probably isn't that good a thing, but it's a different story. Regardless, she looked at this pit profile and says, so what? And I said, oh, that's not good. But then when I simply just said that the pit was a 3, she brightened up and said, oh, that sucks. So let's talk about how we got there. So, strength scored a 2 with an ECT of 13. Structure, a 0 with a persistent weak layer present, all 3 PhD factors, and the ECTP rule applied. And propagation, a 1 with a propagating ECT for a score of 3. Quick and easy to communicate, even from me to her. So let's do a pit from the start. We could go into long, drawn-out detail over radio and describe this pit as an ECTP-11 failing on facets at 70 centimeters in depth with a 4 to 1 finger slab on a north-northeast aspect at 10,000 feet. Or I could key the mic and say that I'm at 10,000 feet north-northeast with a score of 3. The score gives me a quick and accurate picture of what's going on. In short, like my wife said, it sucks out there. So does this concept work in practice? This is where we get into some graphs, and mine aren't as cool as Zach's, but I think we'll understand them. To answer that question, we examined 100 snow pits to start with, drawn from the snowpit database at random. To be considered, the pit had to include an ECT score, as well as an observer's stability rating. Looking at these pit entries, I examined the structure and then the ECT scores of the pit. And then based on this, the pit was scored using the scoring method. At this point, the score was then compared to the stated, quote, stability reported by the recorder. This comparison showed good correlation between the use of the method and the user's stability assessments. So, the testing of the first 100 pits from the snowpit database produced encouraging results. So we decided to go forward and dig into a much larger data set. And after these promising initial findings, we automated the scoring method and applied it to nearly 3,400 snow pits. Our analysis of 3,393 pits shows promising relationships between the user stability assessments and numerical scores from the proposed method. With each increase in the pit score from 3 to 9, the proportion of pits that users rated as good increases, while the proportion of pits rated as poor declines. This also holds generally for pits scoring a 1 or a 2, but the number of pits in those categories is very small, so those results should be interpreted cautiously. This is visualized in the graph above. Notice that with higher scores, you generally see higher numbers of stability, and with lower scores, vice versa. In a further analysis now of 6,670 pits were sorted into categories of stable versus unstable based on the work of Frank Teckel in 2020. This gives us a base unstable rate of 0.33 seen in the black line on the graph above. At scores of 4 or less, the number of pits rated unstable exceeds the base rate. At scores of 6 or more, the number of pits rated unstable is less than the base rate. And at scores of 5, the number of pits rated unstable is roughly equal to our base rate. This gives us additional confidence that pits with lower scores are more likely to be associated with truly unstable snow, while pits with higher scores are more likely to be associated with stable snowpacks. This was very, very promising. Enough graphs. I hate graphs. I'm just a ski patroller. So, if shown this group of snow pits from an avalanche operation, there's a vast amount of information to digest. Can you at a quick glance tell me what's going on? Too late. What if we organize the data from each pit through scoring? Here's the score for one of those pits. This is where the method simplifies communication of stability assessments. Strength is a 3, structure is 0, and propagation a 1 for a pit score of 4. So not that great. What about one of the other pits? Quickly communicated with a pit score of 8, I'm feeling way, way better. If shown that same group of pits again from the avalanche operation, there's still a vast amount of information, but now through simplified numbers, we can immediately start to see a pattern. Quick and easy to look at and easy to understand. What if we went one step further now? What if we plot the scores from all those pits and put them on an elevation and aspect diagram? Now, it's easier to see what's going on in operation at a quick glance. We have successfully condensed the information into an easily digestible format that can help us to quickly identify patterns. As always, to better understand those patterns, we can dig deeper and look at the individual pits. This method shows great promise for both advanced avalanche education and operational settings where it was used last year. In conclusion, analysis of a large database of thousands of snow pits dug worldwide shows the scoring method correlates reasonably well with stability assessments of avalanche practitioners. Anecdotal evidence leads us to believe that a numerical score may be a better method of communication than our typical stability ratings. Moving forward, we intend to continue to compare this numerical method against newly submitted snow pits. We've only got almost 7,000 data points right now, so we need lots more. So, you can help us by always including an assessed stability rating with your pits. And I'd like to end by saying that this is not the end-all be-all. I do not consider this to be a finished project. I hope this is the start of a conversation. And I encourage you guys to try it out and see if it works. You tell me. Finally, thank you to these people for invaluable feedback and assistance writing this paper. Couldn't have done it without you. Some of you are in the room, and I appreciate it. And I'll take questions, and if you want to read the full paper, you can scan it there. Anybody? I like that people are getting their cameras out. That's what I wanted to see. Awesome. Should we take Cronin or Lynn first?
Take Cronin.
Okay, we'll do Cronin first. Yeah, man.
Ron, you mentioned it a few times. What do you think would make this usable in wet snow?
Repeat the question.
Cronin's question is, what would make this usable in wet snow? And the answer is, I don't know, because I haven't played in enough wet snow with this method to find out. I think if we started trying to use a PST with this, it may change the way people think about this completely. So right now we're only doing it with an ECT. I think if you played with a PST, it'd but apply the same rules, then you may find it functional there. I don't know, Cronin. I honestly don't. Yeah, Lynn.
So some of the most interesting part, I've been in on this since you first came up with it, and so it's not that new to me, but the thing that's new to me was that plotting of them on a radial plot. And to me, that's really interesting, and that shows me patterns. And I'm curious, how do you guys use those at all to, you guys use Smart Mountain, right? So is this a part of your Smart Mountain sort of 3D pictures?
No, it's not yet. This plot is done by hand right now. It's not part of a digitized GIS platform at this point. That was discussed last week at ISSW, whether or not that would become part of it. But I think more people need to buy in and start using it before we start making it part of that program. But right now it's hand plotted, which I'm old fashioned. I still do the wall graph by hand too. So, anyone else?
A question for you guys. He wants to get off the stage, but we're not going to let him quite yet. I'm curious, in the audience, I know we had this entire last fall. I wanted to get it out so people could get exposed to it. Has anybody in this audience used it at all? Yeah? I see Bobby up there and Jake, some folks up there, a bunch of you all. I'm going to ask you if it was useful. Yes? Okay, how was it useful?
We have a really small team, and
Hang on, Cronin. We got this catch box that's a speaker. Here, you guys, check this to Cronin, will you?
Is this on? Oh boy. Bury my face in the box. Yeah, so we have
Just answer the question. Oh, God. Can we bring the curtain down? Go ahead, Cronin.
So we have a really, excuse me, we have a small team. We had quite a few new members on the team with various backgrounds. And so this was a really simple way to, as Graham pointed out, quantify the answers or quantify your results quickly and efficiently. I was able to take this same idea to Alaska and hand it off to the team I worked with and another heli operation, and they incorporated it pretty quickly for the same reason. It's just so much easier on the radio and a lot easier in your guide meetings or in the bar talk to state what you saw that day.
Cool. Anybody else want the speaker? Jake does. I don't know if you can chuck it up there. We could hurt somebody.
Yeah, throw it over the head.
Nice.
Look at that. I found it really useful with students, and I generally work with professionals, but they may not have the mileage to understand how to weight these three factors as they try to make go or no-go decisions, whether to open terrain, closed terrain, etc. And this gives them a way to kind of bring it all together and start to make sense of it, because they may not have 30 years of staring at snow, but they can get each of these numbers really easily. And then to reinforce what both Brendan and Dave said, sorry Dave, I'm not your mom, but I still call you Dave. Just simplifying communication and cleaning up radio traffic is always useful in professional settings.
Cool. Anybody else got something you want to say?
Drop the straight down below you.
Straight down, Gabrielle.
Whoa, cool. I thought it was really useful as a forecaster to track things temporally. Over time, it's quite interesting to see numbers sort of taper as you have a layer that's sort of going into dormancy, and have printouts of those on aspect and elevation roses, and then you'd have snowfall hit and you'd see your numbers change on certain aspects, which is pretty interesting and pretty hard to represent visually or communicate to a team, but when they're laid out throughout a storm cycle, pretty easy to see which layers are waking back up and which aren't. So that was nice. Thanks, Grom.
Great. Anyone else?
Question back there. In the stability wheel, the pies are of different size. Do you consider weighting these differently?
Oh, that's a great question, asking about weighting different factors in the stability wheel. Good luck with that one.
So that's done by design, yes. Strength is a smaller piece of the pie, because in our method, we give strength a scoring range of 1 to 3 versus the 0 to 3 that's available for structure and propagation. So it doesn't carry the same amount of weight, which is also reinforced by the work of Tekel in 2020. The taps are important, but not as critical as propagation and structure. Is that a fair statement, Alex?
What about shear component to it?
Well, if you were to add a quality of shear, right, you could do that. And we looked at doing that with CTs, right, with compression tests as opposed to ECTs. But with the propagating ECT, you, to some extent, by definition, have quality shear, right? I mean, I would say by definition you do. So there's a lot of things that we looked at adding to this. And we started out with a much bigger kind of scorecard, so to speak, right, than this. And I think by adding a lot of those factors, you could probably make this even more precise, and those graphs would really start to fall in, and we'd be looking really, really smart. But the problem with that is it becomes almost impossible to remember all the rules and the factors that you're supposed to be scoring. And that's what we're trying to do, is create something very, very simple that everybody can. I mean, if you take a photo of this and print it and put it in your pit book and carry it around with it, I bet you find that after your 4th pit of the season, you'll never pull it out again because you'll already have it memorized. It's that easy. Whereas if we start doing quality shear and stuff, it gets complicated. Does that make sense? Cool.
I'm gonna call it.
Call it.
Calling it. Great. Thanks, Rom.